I've heard the stories my whole life, and it's just part of me. And so at first I thought it was that, but I think there's a spiritual link.
They weren't going out looking for gold, or they weren't going out looking for fortunes or for riches. They were going to find a place where they could worship.
With everything in readiness, the command is given, and our 60 wagons are on the way. And we could sing, we've left the realms of safety.
We were stopped once by the Indians. There were 1,000 of them. They could have easily killed us all.
July the 5th. We were camped on a small stream called Gooseneck Creek. It was here my sister Mary Louise was born.
A meeting was held. It was decided we could go no further. The snow so deep and no food. We were doomed to starvation.
While many may say our toil was in vain
To enter such a desolate land,
someday this journey will be remembered as our legacy
west.
In the winter of 1846 and 47, a homeless and persecuted people made their way to this, the Missouri River. By its side, they established a small community called winter quarters after the trappers and traders who'd been here before. We were making our way west. Our rights had been trampled on. The Constitution had not protected us. We fled the United States of America to go west. We weren't the first to go west. Others had gone to Oregon and California, but we had to move a large number of people to a new place where we could worship the Lord as we knew we must and raise our families in peace.
In April of 1847, the Vanguard Company left winter quarters with 143 men, 3 women, and 2 children, 73 wagons. How they must have felt, not knowing their destination, not knowing the challenges and dangers which awaited them. Between June of 1846 and October of 1848, some 2,000 pioneer settlers would die and be buried along the trail leading west. And now, under modern circumstances, and in celebration of the courage of those early pioneers, the trek is replicated. This is the first morning of the journey.
My great-great-grandfather, his name is Charles Shumway. He was actually the first wagon. He drove the first wagon across the Missouri River that started the whole trek west.
My grandfolks on my dad's side came from Germany, and on my mother's side came from Scotland. Joined the church in about 1856 and came west, and Brigham Young sent him to Spanish Fork, and there's where the old home is.
I've heard the stories my whole life. I've got 21 direct great-grandparents who crossed the plains, and as Mormon pioneers, and I've heard the stories my whole life, and it's just part of me. And so at first I thought it was that, but I think there's a spiritual link.
The trail from winter quarters, which is now Florence, Nebraska, to the Salt Lake Valley was just over 1,000 miles. It would prove to be a pathway through unsettled America, laden with the hopes and tears and toil of all who would cross. While the Mormon settlers established a road on the north side of the Platte River, the Oregon Trail was laid on the south side. The trails would cross occasionally. The experiences of the pioneers on both sides of the Platte were similar. Challenges with the Indians, childbirth in the backs of wagons, malnutrition and disease. Such were the sacrifices of our pioneer forebears.
The Mormon Trail is a great epic in Western American history. But for us, it's a great thing because it's giving people a better understanding of who we are. We're getting an opportunity to be better understood.
Of course, it was the mobs that drove them from Nauvoo and from other places. The great enemy, though, after they left was the weather. crossing the plains. It was weather that took so many of those early pioneers.
The Sesquicentennial Reenactment Party follows the path the Mormon pioneers established under the direction of Brigham Young. Gordon B. Hinckley, a direct descendant of pioneer ancestors and a successor to Brigham Young, met the reenactment train in Omaha prior to its departure.
We came here from Burlington, Iowa today, from Nauvoo this afternoon, in 40 minutes. It took the pioneers, when they came out of Nauvoo, to reach this place 131 days, slogging through the mud, wagons down to their axles in deep, sticky, boggy mud, with teams doubled and tripled to get them through. It took longer to come from Nauvoo to Council Bluffs and winter quarters than it took to go from here to the Salt Lake Valley. That was 111 days. I don't know, when all's said and done, of anything quite like it in the history of the United States. There were many other people, of course, who emigrated to California and Oregon, but they didn't do it in organized companies to the degree that the Mormon people did. Brigham Young, the Mormon leader, organized the people into companies of hundreds, 50s, and 10s, so that there was order in the camp and order in the movement.
I think it's something like 49% of all the deaths at winter quarters were of infants under age 5. And I believe something like 13% were of persons age 50 and over. So you can see the extreme ages suffered the most.
I never come here and look at that monument over there that I'm not deeply touched. I never get over it. I think it's ingrained very deeply in me, a respect and love and appreciation for those who 150 years ago moved over this trail.
The reenactment trek has been about 10 years in the planning, involving everything from camp setup crews to police escorts, from public relations to press accessibility, from sanitation facilities to physical readiness, from veterinarians to vehicles. Even under modern circumstances, the gathering of horses, wagons, handcarts, and personnel is a formidable task.
Unlike when these horses in the 19th century, when they used horses every day as their major mode of transportation, those horses were in shape. But these horses have had the luxury over the last 6 or 8 weeks during the winter to not have any work to do, and they've been just standing around burning hay. We will go through or look at 10 good teams of horses to take the one team that can work in this environment. Well, a lot of people that I have heard say that they were born 50 years or 150 years too late. But I want you to know, and I'm here to tell you, that I was born in the right place at the right time, because I wouldn't have the opportunity to celebrate this trail and to give my children the opportunity to celebrate this trail if I wasn't born right now.
I crossed the plains of North America on 2 separate occasions. The first time with the Vanguard Company, the pioneer company that was sent out to explore the regions round about, to build the road, and to find the place the Lord wanted us to live with our families. The second time we went back for the rest of the people, this time finding our families and outfitting them and those who hadn't the means to come the year before. This time we would go and stay in the valley of the Great Salt Lake.
By the summer of 1846, winter quarters embraced a population of almost 4,000 Saints. The location would later become the first city of Nebraska. But the fall of that year brought disease and death to this desperate band. Epidemics of scurvy and malaria took their toll on most of the families there, and by the end of their first winter, some 600 people died.
Brigham Young and other general authorities of the church are not given a fair shake when people talk about 600 deaths, because I think they did a remarkable job pulling people through very, very difficult circumstances. If you compare the number of deaths at winter quarters with the number of deaths about 25 years earlier at Missouri cantonment, with all military men of young, vigorous age, they had more than 20% of their numbers die in one winter, whereas at winter quarters it was less than 5%.
Despite the hardships, still there was an amazing sense of excitement, of anticipation, awaiting the move westward. They were going to Zion. And now, just prior to departure, the sense of anticipation upon the faces of the present travelers reveals a glimpse of how it may have been 150 years ago.
I'm in a wagon today. I wish I wasn't. I wish I could walk the whole way with her.
We're from Kansas City and came up for just today.
Excuse me, coming through.
Well, watch out for the wagons. Everybody back.
So we decided to come here with him.
How long have you been here already?
We came here last Tuesday, so about 5 days.
Oh, really? So you've been sleeping out?
Yes.
The whole 5 days?
No, just only last night.
I've been driven for about 4 days here, and they're ready to go.
Say yes.
Right in here. Yes, sir. Thank you. You read that. We love you.
I appreciate it. Thank
You're
you.
in our prayers. And I'll see you out on the trail.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You're going to have your hands full. Yes, sir. It'll be a really tough thing, but the Lord bless you. As was said many times in those pioneer days, we'll see you in the valley. Wagons! Ho! We look forward to meeting you when you complete the journey. We'll be there to say hello as we're here to say goodbye. And may God be with you. May his watchful care be over you. May you be happy as you reenact one of the great movements of all time, the immigration of the Mormon pioneers from winter quarters on the Missouri over to the Elkhorn, across the Elkhorn, up the valley of the Platte, and then up the valley of the Sweetwater, on past Independence Rock and Devil's Gate, and up the Rocky Ridge, and over the Continental Divide, and down into the lower lands of Wyoming, Farson and such places, and then down into the valley of the Great Salt Lake, coming over Big Mountain and then Little Mountain, to where the This Is the Place monument now stands.
And their purpose for being on the trail was religious. It wasn't, they weren't going out looking for gold, or they weren't going out looking for fortunes or for riches. They were going to find a place where they could worship in peace.
I remember seeing a painting once where the handcar pioneers were being pushed by spirits. Like, I don't know, perhaps I feel like maybe we were there helping to push them on. And I used to think that those were angels that were helping them. And now I feel like that perhaps those of us who came afterwards were the ones that were helping him say, please do this so that we can have what we have.
So maybe you've been on the trail before?
There are moments that it sort of feels that way.
This is the Elkhorn River. It's about 25 miles west of what was known in 1847 as Winter Quarters. My great-grandfather was a young man at the time, 14 years old, and one of those settlers that moved west with the pioneers. And in his journal, he records being here on the banks of this river. And one night, prior to their leaving, he came here and found a little frog on the banks and baited a hook and cast in. And within a little while, he had caught this giant catfish. He said it was so big that they had to call someone else from the camp to help him pull it out of the river. Now, it's just a simple little story from his journal, but now that I stand here, it gives me a connection to think that he was here and that I'm here, and that, some way like that, the generations are bridged. I kind of come face to face with my great-grandfather and what he must have experienced here.
On the 30th day of January, 1848, she died at 2:00 p.m. Now the weather was very cold, and I sent word to her father and mother who came, and we buried her the same day.
Through the keeping
Now
of
I
journals
was in a
and
benighted
diaries, the
condition
pioneers
about a wife,
revealed their
3
souls,
little hapless
and as the
children,
Mormon Trail
and a
stretched
journey of
across the
11
American plains, their writings were prolific.
The Mormons were a very literate people, and they kept lots of journals. And the result was that we have a lot of wonderful historical material. We have so much that we can't find the end of it. It's like the universe. You keep probing and probing, and there's a whole lot more out there beyond your reach.
Well, it actually gives meaning to why we're here. Otherwise, it would be something like a glorified camping trip.
At Camp Israel, Winter Quarters, on the 11th of December, 1846, Amy's twin sons, Joseph and Benjamin, were born. They died the following day and were buried in Winter Quarters Cemetery. It really does continue to fail. It really does something for me to know more about my people. It gives me a greater determination to be a better person, knowing the kind of trials that they went through, greater than I have ever had to go through.
Yeah, this is Amy Porter's grave. And these two are related.
And they had never seen each other before now.
She must be a fine. Well, the reason we
absolutely, and of course we know you.
Only a few of those who died at Winter Quarters now lie in marked graves. Unknown to Rihanna Ferber was that Amy Porter's grave was one of those which was marked, and that she was reading this journal excerpt while standing only a few feet from the exact spot.
Chauncey Warner Porter, who married Amy
Summer.
No, excuse me. Married Amy
Right.
Summer, but when this woman was ill, she asked my
Lydia
great-grand Lydia Ann Cook, who was just a teenager,
Right.
if she would marry her husband, Chauncey, and take care of her children, and she did.
She did.
Those who walk this modern Mormon trail feel a kinship with those pioneers who went before. At the cemetery in Winter Quarters, families and individuals often gather, spending many a thoughtful moment looking upon the graves of ancestors left behind.
I was going through the graveyard today, walking with my daughter, and reading the gravestones from these children who were the exact same ages as my children. 4 years old, 11 days. 5 years old, 19 days, something like that. I would look at a gravestone, and my daughter would say, "Read this one, does this have my name on it?" And then other ones would say, "Look, here's some with the name Stout on it, right here."
I have to say my heart was beating faster and my stomach feels a little fluttery. And I cry.
When I first beheld the light of day, it was in the springtime when the landscape had put on its beautiful robe of green, and all nature was smiling under the warmth of the morning sun, at whose approach the glistening
Aside from these common everyday happenings, nothing occurred until we had traveled far out into the desert wilds and were beginning to feel that we were going to reach our destination without being molested. But alas, we were disappointed. For one evening, after we had drawn our wagons into a circle preparatory for camping for the night, a large band of Indians with a few squaws rode in and halted within a short distance of the camp. Seeming to be friendly, as a few of the squaws came within the circle and were quite sociable. One of them came up to my mother, who was holding me in her lap and began to fondle me, patting me on the cheek, making considerable ado over me. Finally, she asked the privilege of taking me, and Mother, thinking her to be friendly, permitted her to do so. No sooner had she gotten me in her arms than she started to run to where the Indians were, with Mother in hot pursuit. But before she could catch her, the Indians surrounded the squaw and started off. The captain, seeing the situation, instantly called the men to arms and told them they would fight for the baby. At this warning, the Indians halted and held a short council, and then returned me to my mother, none the worse for the experience. After this event, we were left to pursue our journey in peace and joy. Joy over the way things had turned out, and all filled with thanks and praise to God for his kind intervention in our behalf.
Never before since the time of Moses had the children of Israel been forced to leave their homes to save their lives. Stretched out behind us was the bloodshed of our loved ones and all the landed property and improvements we'd been forced to leave behind. Stretched out in front of us was the great unknown in the shape of gigantic mountains, vast plains, and half-seen Indians. And there they was, ready to go with the pure, simple faith of the saints of God.